I guess my question is sort of around, and I know there's really no difference between these two states, but the idea of sort of an expansive state and then a contraction,
Yeah,
or a being and then a meing, and
yeah,
how maybe there's a fluctuation between those two states, and whether that still happens, whether you still get tangled sometimes in the me story, or whether you're always in being, and the meing is sort of just something that's happening alongside that. Because I feel
yeah,
like, I guess times when I've had really big expansions, then thought will come in very strongly the next day, and then try and tangle me back into sort of, ideas about my story. And I know in sort of, in ultimately there's no difference between those states, but it feels like it feels more contracted, or it feels more entangled in the story.
yeah. So the way that Roger taught me, so Roger Castillo was my main teacher. So the way that he taught me was that, so he speaks a lot about peace of mind. Um, and the way he taught me was that when you feel more expanded, you feel more happy and at peace. And when you feel more contracted, there is suffering, thoughts, discomfort, um, and a feeling of contraction, a feeling like you're very small in a way. And it's an energetic sense. And I found this super helpful to label it in this manner because it, when these fluctuations were strong here, um, the I could see when I felt more expanded, I did feel more happy. Or I could see when I was happy, I felt expanded, either way, and the same the other way. And what this did in the mind and in the person was it helped me organize my illusions. So, and it helped me register that happiness was not pleasure, or freedom wasn't pleasure, but freedom um, was the expansion, the connection to who you truly are. And contraction, so when you're really strongly you, that is the lack of freedom, of apparent freedom. Um, and so it's a really helpful, I think, teaching modality to see this, because what it does is it very clearly points to pleasure and pain not being the answer. And old seeking patterns do sometimes come up here. I don't know though if I feel really a sense of contraction, though. There's certainly pain when seeking pattern comes up. Yeah. It kind of shifted at one point where these seeking patterns would come up, but it kind of, the pain of it, but it kind of felt like it was happening in a vessel inside of a very expansive space. Yeah, I think you muted yourself. Do you want to add anything? I can unmute you. Or are you
Sorry,
done?
I'm not normally on Zoom. I have to mute in between, so I always forget.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. I think that idea of, yeah, to I it's hard to always always, when I get tangled back in the story, I think it's hard to, um sometimes it's hard to come back to expansive space, or
when the
um
tangling's happening, the most important thing to recognize is that the tangling's happening. Often, what the mind does is it outsources it to a source.
mm,
or in or insources it to itself, says it's because of me or my fault. Whereas what's happening is there is identification and therefore there is suffering, and it's not your fault or the external's fault.
Mm.
And that person can't do anything to get back to the expansion, but it's just noticing what it's doing. Like that's part of what seems to happen is discernment as to the illusion.
Yeah.
So it's really great, you know, that when you feel contracted, that's a really great indicator, you know, rather than running off into the stories of it in action. It's like, okay, I feel contracted, I'm suffering. Let's just go and lay down and allow this suffering to come up and show
Yeah.
whatever it wants to show, rather than kind
Yeah.
of going and acting it all out.
Yeah. Sometimes there's the ability to do that, and sometimes there's just a strong feeling of like, I need to run away from this.
Yeah, I know.
Uh, and those, yeah, I guess that's not a choice either, right? I guess just whatever comes up. But yeah.
Yeah, whatever
Um,
comes up. But the more these things, I mean, it's habits and conditions, and the more these things are spoken about, and the more that it's seen that it doesn't work running away, the more the movement of that body will be to, okay, let's just sit and give this time.
yeah. Um, Thank you. I'm gonna leave it there. Thanks. That was really good. Thank you. Really
Yeah,
helpful.
pleasure.